I am Jon Peddie from Jon Peddie Research, and our company does consulting and market research. We advise industry leaders as well as investors. We report on various digital technologies, primarily associated with computer graphics, and we do actual product testing and benchmarking, and we conduct and participate at various conferences. We're going to talk about remote work and how we got here. And we can, I hate to say the word thank COVID because that sounds so obnoxious, but we can thank COVID for how we got here. And it's because of what COVID did that required us to test ourselves, so to speak. We found the limits of computing across client and cloud and network ecosystems, and the importance of remote work to do that. Remote work and play continues to benefit computing market with client, cloud, and network developments, but the human factors are still an issue, a very big issue. And although I usually speak about bits, bytes, and shares and fantastic images, today's talk is going to be more about social issues and the consequences. So some of my comments may make you uncomfortable and you may not agree with them. COVID showed us the weakness of our systems, the weakness in our response to early warning and ignoring the data and reverting to finger pointing, in the weakness of our political systems as anti-masks, as anti-vax groups lined up viciously against pro-mask and pro-vax groups, the goal not being to save people, but to be right and malign the other group. And sadly, it showed us the results of such ignorant and selfish behavior. Over 1 million deaths in the United States to COVID, the highest in anywhere in the world. 47,000 in Canada, 330,000 in Mexico. And the factions even argue over that. It showed us how ill-prepared and unorganized we were for massive national emergencies and the result of false economies and cutback in the name of a few tax dollars. Those tax dollars seem pretty cheap now compared to the loss of loved ones. COVID shut down centralized operations and sent people home to work, play, and while their time away, while we waited for vaccines and home testing. COVID changed everything. Some things permanently, others significantly modified, mostly for the better, some still in flux. The COVID shutdown showed immediate benefits to the environment by getting cars and airplanes and associated infrastructure shut down, despite the whining of industrialists and politicians who saw their pocketbook affected. COVID showed us the direct cause-effect link of burning fossil fuels and climate change. The irony of the effects is COVID, while things were shut down, the air was the safest to breathe. And now the people are going back to work and commuting, the air worsens. It seems we can't win for losing. During COVID, from my little mountain here in Tiburon, I could see all the way 22 miles to the very, very long San Mateo Bridge that links the East and the West Bay. Now I can barely see the Bay Bridge, which is a mere 15 miles away, and that's over open water. So going back to work has also gone back to pollution. COVID sent people home to work, and many of them didn't have adequate equipment for the task. Companies large and small ordered new PCs and accessories, which emptied warehouses and retail shops. Some research firms misread that surge and predicted new market growth, as if millions of new consumers had suddenly arrived from Mars. Those same firms were shocked now that the PC and accessory industry have fallen back to normal and even lower than normal due to inventory imbalance from this misreading of signs and ignoring history and just common sense. Despite the pressure of them and high levels of uncertainty, early evidence indicated many firms were bold and innovative in response to the pandemic. Companies shifted rapidly to online channels, automating production tasks. They increased operational efficiency and sped up decision-making and innovation and operating modes. This could potentially more than double the rate of annual productivity growth observed by the global financial crisis. Enlightened organizations that didn't rely on fixed location equipment initiated X days in and Y days out for workers who weren't customer facing or required to operate in-place machinery or vehicles. The result of that was that productivity is up. Respondents to various surveys were asked whether their productivity felt higher during the pandemic than it was before or lower. And the results suggested 54%, that's over the majority, of people thought they had gotten higher productivity for every hour they worked than they did before the pandemic. Additionally, they could, if they chose, work more hours because they didn't face the stress of the commute. When coupled with the proportion of people who rated their productivity the same as before, it meant that nearly 90% thought that productivity had either stayed the same or improved while working from home. This is a result that broadly matches what previous studies have shown about productivity gains in remote work. And yet we have some companies who think that people can't be trusted at home. However, some employees miss the sociability and benefits of collaboration offered by working in shared workspaces. That creates a pent-up demand, particularly among young people. Also, people just entering the workforce, the shutdown denied them mentorship and cultural training necessary to rise in an organization. Points out that there just are no simple answers. It's neither black nor white. 2 to 3 more hours of a worker's time is saved by not commuting to and from an office. That frees up more time to be creative and to concentrate. Not having to commute reduces stress, which contributes to well-being and productivity, including not breathing the polluted air one gets from commuting. Generally speaking, there are fewer distractions working at home, and one spends more time with their family, although some people may not want to see that as a benefit. What's better for one's mental and physical health? Being cramped in a cube subject to viral and biological exposure from people in an office and similar exposure from strangers whilst commuting, or being in one's home? But does that make us all bubble babies with no resistance and build-up immunities? I can speak to that a little bit. You may hear hoarseness in my voice. I've been fighting a cold for several weeks. I haven't had a cold in 20 years. And some people have suggested it's because I've stayed home and didn't build up any immunity. Corporations also benefit from that. They were able to break the spiraling demand of office space requirements and associated costs. But simultaneously, that left them with underused facilities that they still have to pay for. So there's just no easy answers here. I think it'll take 5 to 10 years for this new normal to find buoyancy, and it won't look much like it does today, and it won't be the same for every company. One case in point is a new electrification system, train system, that's been put in service between San Francisco and San Jose, a very high commute area. I've ridden that train a few times. The noisy, polluting diesel engines have been retired, and the ride is quieter and smoother. There's just one problem. There's no passengers on the train. And then we have everybody wants to be working for 6 to 10 days, or 6 to 10 hours rather, wearing VR. This is a concept of what the metaverse might be, that the metaverse might be a VR environment. I don't share that view, but that's what some people think it could be. And it will be, living in Web 3.0 and will be exchanging NFTs. And how could you possibly work on a spreadsheet if you didn't have a 360-degree view of it and every Word file and web page you ever wanted to display or download? Indeed, how do we manage? Well, we do. However, in the real world, a 3D view of a virtual world doesn't have a lot of practicality unless you're an engineer designing such things, or a scientist, or maybe an abstract mathematician. Gamers, of course, will enjoy 3D views. They always have. And gamers are probably some of the biggest VR users. Engineers and architects working on and in digital twins will embrace it, as will car designers. They already do that and have done it. Surgeons and surgical teachers do that and have done it. And anyone dealing with genuine 3D data, they do that now. And they have for years. So this is not something novel or unique to them. Remote working for and playing is not much different than what you've experienced now, surfing the web. We're using an online service like Google Workspace, Microsoft Office, Teams, for example, or an online multiplayer game. For enterprise collaboration, security is a big issue. And so that requires special handling to make sure that corporate IP is protected. An example there is in the movie industry, where special effects studios are scattered literally all over the world, and they have to deal with the IP of a new movie. Very, very, very secret stuff, very, closely guarded, and yet they do it. So it can be done. Demanding high performance work, such as simulations, CAD, and 3D modeling, require powerful processors and as much memory as possible. If the remote client device is not up to that task, then remote processing is deployed by a workstation server. The results are sent as pixels to the client via a virtual device, or what we call a device interface, VDI. Now, VDI is not new. It came into prominence with COVID, but it's been around for a while. Gaming sites like NVIDIA's GeForce Now and Epic's Fortnite use VDI. Those systems allow gameplay on almost any device, and they maintain the player's space in the game if the player moves from one device to another. It's called presence. Remote work allows time zone, free worldwide collaboration. Participations can be at home, in a coffee shop, in a lab. Collaboration capabilities can be found in many applications, from messaging systems like Microsoft's Teams to Zoom, popular engineering applications like PTC's Onshape, environments Canvas, Autodesk's Rivet, and SketchUp. That's just to name a few. So this isn't unusual, novel, or revolutionary stuff that we're dealing with here. We've been using this stuff for quite some time. The data center, in data centers, files are generally stay in the cloud. Complex programs like finite element analysis and computational fluid dynamics typically have such large memory and processor demands they can only be done in the cloud. Such programs can be run on powerful local workstations, but not everybody has one of those. All the hardware suppliers like Dell and HP, Lenovo, they support VDI from the server to the client. Microsoft and Cisco, VMware, Dell, Systrix, they all support VDI. In fact, they invented VDI. And so we stop. So setting up a system is not difficult, and considering the payoff, it's not too expensive either. The AI of remote is something else again. You may not know it, but you may already be using AI. If you've used Microsoft Word, for example, Office apps, and you use automatic spelling or auto spell check and autofill, that autofilling that you see where words are being put out in front of you that you might have typed, that's all done in the cloud. That's done with AI in the cloud. You find the same thing on your smartphone. So in those cases, you're participating in a remote work and activities. The implication for gameplay seems obvious. Smarter AI enemies are more often being run from the cloud. And if you're a broadcaster, chances are you're using transcoders in the cloud. Almost all the broadcasters today do. So remote work at the office. Even if you go back to the office, the chances are you're working remotely from an actual processing. Think of all the gas stations. They're just dumb terminals. They're all remote terminals, and so many of the checkout counters at your grocery stores, for example, almost every credit card transaction you make is a remote process operation. So the distinction between those POSs, the point of sale scenarios, and everything previously mentioned is about interactivity. In a POS situation, all you do is press a few keys and maybe sign something. In a collaborative remote working situation, you're fully engaged. And if it's not a collaboration situation, you're still fully engaged with the application you're using by yourself, with the files and the models you're creating. So to wrap it all up, remote work and play is now an intrinsic part of our lives. Workers are demanding to work at home, and that's not a slight statement. There have been several stories where workers have just refused to go into an office and have quit their job and gone somewhere else. The environment Worker morale and new office space requirements benefit and also change. Insecure and incompetent managers, however, will still insist on mandatory worker office. These are managers who don't know how to manage. They only know how to intimidate. New employees will need in-person mentoring. No single approach meets all these needs. And so one of the things we're trying to do with TIFCA and with CORA is to address some of these issues at the same time, look at the hardware implications of it. And it's a big project. And so that's it for me. And back to you, Neil.